Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video I want to introduce you to the 8.33 kHz radio range. This is going to be important for all the VATSIM pilots because VATSIM is starting an 8.33 kHz trial now, and I want to give you a little bit of background information as to what that actually means, how that works, and what is important for you guys as the pilots flying these things. So let's start with a little bit of basics. Over here VATSIM have announced that they are going with the 8.33 kHz radios. So frequencies are getting a little bit more complicated, as they say, and as a little bit of background information there to start up with, any aircraft, or any new aircraft I should say, in Microsoft Flight Simulator does support the 8.33 kHz range. Only a couple of ones in older simulators like FSX or like P3D up to version 3, I believe, didn't have 8.33 kHz. So if you're flying one of those simulators, then you might be left with a little bit of a problem there. Even if you're flying PMDG and P3D V5, even though the simulator natively supports it, the PMDG doesn't. So you might be looking for a little bit of a change there. However, there is ways how to circumvent that, and I will talk about those a little bit later. But at first, let's talk about why we actually need those 8.33 kHz frequencies. It's actually quite easy. So, approximately 10 years back, I didn't look up the exact date, but it hasn't been too long. In Europe, they introduced the new range for radio frequencies with the 8.33 kHz. Now, that was necessary because the range of available frequencies from the previous 25 kHz band just became too limited, and they needed to open more ATC stations than they had frequencies available. And for that reason, the new range was introduced, and existing airliners had to be retrofitted with the new system. Now, indeed, in other parts of the world, like the United States, they aren't using those frequencies quite yet. So if you are from the US or if you are from anywhere outside of Europe, then you might not be very used to those frequencies. But don't worry, it's actually quite easy. So first of all, 8.33, that sounds so complicated, but it really isn't. If we have a look down at our radios, you can see that instead of the previous, where you only needed the first two digits after the decimal in your frequency, you now are basically using the last digit. Previously, you only had 0.25, 0.5 and 0.75 available like this, and then it would switch over. Now you can see that there is more frequencies available. However, let's take things a little bit simpler and start a little bit earlier. So, first of all, when you're scrolling through your frequencies, you might be saying, well, but these are not 8.33, are they? Well, yes and no. The truth is that the display has been simplified a little bit, so that when you're scrolling through it, you're basically getting easy numbers. But you will notice that at points you can advance in terms of 0.005 and sometimes just 0.01, like so, from 15 to 25. And this is basically the rounding error that you get by using 8.33 versus what you're displaying on the aircraft radios, so don't worry about that. Now, in practical terms, for actually handling your radios, I was thrown a little bit into the cold as well when I started flying in real life, or rather when I started flying commercially in real life, because that was the first time I was confronted with the 8.33 kHz range, while previously I have been flying in VATSIM to, you know, keep up my skills after finishing flight school and so on. So you now, just like me back then, are kind of thrown into the dark here when it comes to handling the new frequencies, but it's actually quite easy. The most important thing is that you actually understand which numbers to read back. So when you are getting a frequency and the last digit ends on a 0, then you basically don't have to read that 0 back. The same goes if you have 2 zeros in the back, then you don't need to read those back as well. So let's go over a couple of practical examples. Let's say that right now we have to contact Maastricht radar on frequency 132.830. So you would read that back by saying 132.83. And now you can go ahead and dial that in, 132.83. It takes a little while, and for those of you who have actually seen my video on how to dial in frequencies quicker in the PMDG, here's a little repetition of that trick I'm using. Basically, if you are holding your left mouse wheel to turn the thing, and then you are scrolling on it as well, like that, you can turn the knob pretty fast. In the real airplane, if you simply turn the knob faster, you don't get any acceleration of the tuning. However, if you have a very close look into how far this actually turns and what kind of a difference it makes over here, then you can kind of get that if you're using your hand to turn the knob like around by one, then you are like, well, almost through. Not the entire thing, but in my experience, if you make one quick turn with your hand on the knob, then you get around about a 0.3 difference, so 3 turns and you have dialed through the entire thing. So things can go quite quick in the real world, but if you're using the left mouse knob to turn it like so and then you scroll on it, it goes quite quickly in the PNG as well. So 132.830 you read back as 132.83, but have a very close look at that. For example, you've got the Frankfurt apron frequency 121.855, and that one you actually need to read back completely. So you don't just say 121.85, but actually 121.855, because as you can see from 0.850 there is still 0.855 available in the radio over here. Now, when you've got a frequency wrong by 0.005, so if you dialed in 121.85 rather than 121.855, chances are that air traffic control can hear you, but you can't hear them. And the result of that is going to be total chaos, because you think there's nobody transmitting on frequency, but then you are transmitting, but you don't hear what's going on over there. So chances are you are interrupting other people and so on. So be very careful when you're tuning those frequencies. Overall, it does take a little bit of your mindset to get adjusted to the new frequencies, but once it is adjusted, I can tell you it's really easy to dial in those frequencies, and it's really easy to handle all of those. So, important things like Honeycomb frequency 122.8 don't change. The guard frequency 121.5 is unchanged as well, and the universal talking frequency of 123.45, which is not an official frequency, by the way, but people still use it, so 123.45 is actually available to you as well. Those have not changed. Alright, so finally, whereabout can you expect the new frequency range then? Well, let's start with a simple flight. Right now I'm going from Bilbao towards La Coruña in Spain, and as you can see, all the frequencies still equal the old school 0.025 range, so nothing changed over here. But let's go ahead and go to another airport. Let's take Frankfurt, for example, and have a look into the charts at Frankfurt, and all of a sudden you will see that pretty much no frequency still equals the old range. So if we have a look into the frequencies over there, H is 121.73, delivery 121.905, ground 121.805. Then just look at all those apron frequencies. There is basically, well, over here we've got a tower frequency that still resembles the old radio range. But apart from that, you can see that none of those frequencies actually equals the old school style anymore. Alright, so VATSIM is doing a trial up to 3 months right now. It can actually be a little bit less as well. If things are going successful, they might leave the trial a little bit earlier. And the trial is taking place in those countries where you are actually seeing the 8.33 kilohertz frequencies the most, which are Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. So if you're flying anywhere there on VATSIM over the next 3 months, then you will probably be surprised to hear a couple of frequencies that you have not been used to before. But don't worry at all, you can just use those. You can use your pilot client to look them up, but if you do that, then be very careful. You might have several stations with similar naming convention, so be very careful when you're doing that, as things might be a little, let's call it, things might be a little bit confusing at first, so be sure to pick the correct frequency. And if you don't understand what air traffic control is saying, because you may not be used to picking up frequencies that easily yet, then there is no shame whatsoever to ask the controller to say again, to actually say speak slower, which is an official phrase from the AIP, so you can tell any controller speak slower. That is an official phrase in the AIP. You can always use that. Or in the worst case, you can just tell them to use text. Now, talking about using text, here is something for you to be aware of as well, at least sort of. So if you are actually flying an airplane which does not support the 8.33 kilohertz range, so that may be the case on many old school style airplanes, even though many developers have actually implemented some tricks there, like if you're flying the PMDG DC-6, then even though not officially indicated, you can still dial in the 8.33 frequencies, even though you don't see them on display. The same applies, for example, to the Just Flight Fokker 28, so you can dial them in like that. But if you have an airplane that actually does not support them, then you can do a couple of tricks by going into your pilot client, like over here I'm using VPilot, and then you can type, for example, .com1 space 132.830, hit enter, and then as you can see over here it tells you your COM frequency has now been set to the new range. Alright, so as a final thing to finish this one up, what do I think of it? Well, to be honest, I think it was a long overdue introduction, but I can understand that VATSIM have actually waited until the vast majority of simmers now have aircraft available that actually support the new frequency range. So in my opinion it is overdue, but they are acting on it now. They're running the trial to see how reception among flight simmers is, and then I surely hope that it is going to be put in stone, carved in stone, that they are taking this over permanently. Alright, that's it for today's video. I do hope you enjoyed this one. I do hope you enjoyed the little bit of a background that I shed into this. Thank you very much for watching. I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, leave a like to the video if you did like it, as it does help with the YouTube algorithms. Comment to let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you think that you share my opinion that this is an overdue change, or if you think that as long as there are people out there using FSX, P3D, or aircraft like those, that we should remain with the old frequencies. And finally, if you are up for more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you really love my videos, I would appreciate to either see you as a channel member, giving you early access to new videos before they're released for everyone else, or to see a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.